So what we're going to be talking about earlier, we had an opportunity to talk about basically fintech movement and creating profitable companies that create opportunities for improvement process and vendor spend. That company earlier that we talked about was Quant 16. So for those who are new and didn't get an opportunity to hear about Quant 16 and still here, for more information on Quant 16, you can go to quant16.com and see all the exciting things we do around creating efficiencies for companies, vendor spend, creating more minority companies in the country. I'm going to bring up two of the participants that's going to help out today. The first guy needs very little introductions. His shirt is going to say it all. Eddie. He has the coolest shirt in the building right now. Eddie is Alpha Mission, Mr. Alpha Mission. He oversees government affairs and business development and every other thing that the enterprise needs to do. So Eddie, just give us a quick snapshot in terms of sort of what you do, and then I'm going to invite Robert to the stage. Quick.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Thank you to the Grit folks for hosting us. Absolutely fantastic space. So I work for Robert, and we have a portfolio of companies, EKI Digital, which is an IT consultancy, Killer Spin, of course, and then our new company, Quant 16. And so my role is helping to educate folks about what Quant 16 can do, and how Quant 16 dedicates 30% of its revenue to funding the programs associated with the Alpha Mission. So we're really excited about that, about showing the free market works for everybody. I came out of government. We have wonderful supplier diversity programs in government, but it's not enough. We have to have the free market participate, and so that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Eddie, man. Mm-hmm. So the next guy, if you were not here, you missed a treat. I call him the Maz Whiz Kid. I call him the serial entrepreneur from tabletop tennis to digital transformation and now Alpha Mission. He's the founder of them all, Mr. Robert Blackwell Jr. He doesn't like those type of introductions, but I had to do it. Robert, welcome to the stage.
Thank you.
Again. Can we have a seat here?
Yeah.
Let's do that. So we talked about earlier in the first segment just the idea, and Eddie touched on it, creating profitable entities that then create an opportunity for social impact. Robert, you founded what we call Alpha Mission. Give us a little bit of idea of what Alpha Mission is and what made you start it.
Well, I describe Alpha Mission as a movement of goodwill, people of goodwill, dedicated to proving that the free enterprise system works for everybody. And what I think is we're trying to start what I call the fourth great American movement. The first was the American Revolution, really the first country in history that was dedicated to self-governance, right? The people didn't report to a ruler, the government existed for the benefit of the people. Why the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution are beautiful documents, and we made some progress. Not everybody benefited, obviously.
Sure.
The next great American movement that came out of that, I think, was the abolition of slavery, to remove the stain of slavery from the country.
Okay.
Because you can't have, on one hand, saying that all men are created equal, but on the other hand, you have to say some men don't count.
Okay.
So there were people, both black and white, that were focused on removing the stain of slavery from the American continent. The next movement was, and by the way, they tend to happen once a century.
Once a century.
So the American Revolution was the 18th century. The abolition of slavery was the 19th century. The 20th century was about civil rights, or what I call one set of rules. Just one set of rules for everybody.
Sure.
But this century has to be about, I believe, proving that the free enterprise system works for everybody. Because if we don't, we're going to lose it. We won't be the first country in history that have lost their freedom. And what I believe is that when we prove that the free enterprise system works for everybody, everybody will do better.
Wow. So Eddie, you talked about helping across the portfolios of companies. Give us a little bit about sort of the connecting the dots between the for-profit side, Quant 16, being a profitable company. You mentioned 30% of the profit is funneled into Alpha Mission. Give us an idea sort of how that function and sort of the the backdrop and the explanation of how that actually works.
Sure, absolutely. So what Quant 16 does, it starts with Quant 16. So Quant 16 will service a customer, identify inefficiencies in their spend. We don't charge our customers, we charge the vendors of those customers a small portfolio management fee.
Sure.
And that funds obviously the operations of Quant 16, but it also funds the Alpha mission. And so there's a series of programs that we've come up with under the auspices of the Alpha mission, right, which is that new movement, right, the 21st century American movement, where we fund these series of programs, housing for tutoring exchange, mowers and blowers program, where we finance people in the landscaping and beautification space. We fund entrepreneurs with a Shark Tank-like pool, and then we also have programs in the digital trades, right, to get people into the economy, to provide skills where on the back end there's a job, right, where people are going to get educated for a job as opposed to just getting educated.
Right. That's awesome. So I'm gonna bounce back to you, Robert. When you saw the need for this in terms of creating this next era of movement, you looked at your portfolio of companies, and we talked about the Killer Spin, EKI Digital, and now Quant 16. And Quant 16 is really the company that's going to be sort of investing, or the initial engine for driving contributions for Alpha Mission. Eddie spoke about a couple of initiatives. Talk about, because I think the mowers and blowers, needs to be explained, and the housing for tutors. Like Eddie talked about it. I kind of want to know what's in the secret sauce there. How does that work?
So, two things. So the Alpha Mission, again, is a movement of people of goodwill dedicated to proving that the free enterprise system works for everybody. So you do that through, there's only one way that people go from poverty to prosperity. It is entrepreneurial-led economic activity, which leads to the appreciation of education, and social capital. Social capital is when you reach back and you pull people from your community along, but more importantly, you create an aspirational roadmap for your young people so they know where to place their bets. The big issue we have in the black community is, and I've asked this question 1,000 times, name 2 famous black entrepreneurs that would be nationally known with no connection to sports or any other form of entertainment. Not one person in a decade of me asking that question has ever been able to answer it. So why does that matter? It's because black kids trapped in poverty can't either. The market tells them to place their bets on sports and entertainment, so that's what they do. They prepare themselves for that. So what we have to do is to create the market evidence that sends a signal to young people to prepare themselves for these opportunities. But you can only do that when you're doing business. So the idea is that we ask companies, we're trying to get people to come on this journey with us, because one of the things that have happened in these movements has been they have been a partnership between the black and white business communities all the way back to the Revolutionary War. Most people don't know there was a famous black financier. His name is James Fortin from Philadelphia. He was one of the richest people in Philadelphia in the 1700s. That helped finance the American Revolution.
Absolutely.
This has happened over and over again. So I believe it is this generation's responsibility to do things, to deliver value to a customer, and then go pull other people forward.
Eddie, you talked about earlier working in years and years of government, and I know we can talk about the tremendous amount of spend that there is in government agencies, both public and private. And you have a history on supplier diversity programs. How does the idea of Alpha Mission differ from traditional supplier diversity programs? And elaborate on that for us just a little bit.
Sure. So a lot of supplier diversity, especially in the government space, right, is really meant to ameliorate the legacy of discrimination. But government is a challenging place to do business. And so for minority-owned companies that tend to be smaller, government is a really, really challenging place to break into. And so those programs are really important, and we need to support them and maintain them. But we're not going to get to achieve what we want to achieve exclusively through the government. If we were, we would be there already. right? These programs have been around since the Nixon administration. And so the private sector needs to engage as well. But it can't be a charity. It can't be, I'm going to pat you on the head and help you, poor little person who can't help themselves. Now, we need to inspire new generations to consider entrepreneurship, to consider starting their own company, and to focus on the value that they can add aside from entertainment, right? Where they can actually deliver value in the modern economy. Otherwise, we're going to continue to have people falling further and further behind and having the social drama that we have today.
Right. So with the companies that Robert's built and that you help manage, speaking one in terms of Quant 16, it really creates an opportunity, both public and private, for those companies to be identified, participate, and contribute, and then offer real value to their customers, and then in return, basically reach back and develop more. Robert, would you say that's the formula?
Yeah, the formula is, again, it's the tying opportunity to responsibility for bringing other people forward. So as you go and to be successful, you need two things. You need to participate in the modern parts of the economy that create wealth, but you also have to create the social capital that tells young people where to place their bets and creates opportunity for them. This is how, like, all immigrant communities grow. In fact, what most people don't know is when people come to the United States, immigrant communities, and within 3 generations, they tend to be more wealthy than the average American. So there is a formula that works. What I think we have to do is to apply that formula to our situation, and if we don't do it, there's going to be bad consequences for the company. So the Alpha mission is about telling people to just do business. So government, and by the way, government doesn't do anything either. Most of it's a bunch of fake corporate virtue signaling. Government's not much better.
Okay.
They talk about what they want to do. They have their communication partners. I mean, people put out these beautiful statements. We're going to put $100 trillion into the community. That ain't gone anywhere.
Right.
So the thing is, just do business in a small but meaningful way. So we created something called the Lead Partner Program.
Okay.
The Lead Partner Program says to companies, just do business. And really the CEO, do business with a qualified black company, a modern part of the economy, and just pick one and you're done. Tell your CIO pick one and you're done. Tell your CFO pick one and you're done. Your general counsel, whoever. Just tell them pick one and that's it. You don't need to boil the ocean. Just pick one. But be open to innovative ideas from black companies that can deliver value, and then ask other people to follow your lead.
And then when those black companies are successful, what is their
So
responsibility?
their responsibility is 3. One's to identify a clear value proposition, because if you can't do that, you can't be in business.
No business. Yep.
Number 2, in exchange for that opportunity, you have to pull other people forward. So the black company should be the prime and the subs, the mentors, and the proteges. Because we've had this black people being subs for generations, and they never get anywhere.
Well, just kind of define that. When you say, for those at home who are listening, when you say black people just being subs.
I'm talking about what happens typically in these things is that people have their diversity programs,
Okay.
but they don't actually do business directly
Okay.
with black companies. They'll tell somebody else to do business. So you subcontract some of the money that we're giving you. You do business with the black companies and do X percent.
Got it.
The problem, what happens is that if you peel under the covers, there's no money there.
Sure.
So you can create the illusion of doing business without doing any business, and that's why we're in the situation we are. And then the third responsibility of the black company is to take on what I call some meaningful community enrichment responsibilities. So we fund small black IT companies.
Yep.
We fund something called mowers and blowers. It's microfinance for cutting grass and moving snow. And then lastly, we want to do something called a housing for tutoring exchange. So we give honor roll black college students a place to live in exchange for mentoring and tutoring elementary and high school kids. So this is why Quant 16 really exists, to create an efficient economic ecosystem that pulls people out of poverty by creating opportunity and aspiration.
excellent. We talked about it earlier this afternoon. I think it's a fabulous business model. Over the last couple of years, we've heard large corporations make huge commitments. I'm talking about if you add them up, it can solve a lot of problems. What's our message here today? How Quant 16 could help those type of large business, and then how that links into sort of the future for Alpha Mission. So, let's take companies like Apple, Nike, McDonald's, and I'm not picking on them. I'm just calling off a few that has made huge contributions or commitments for contributions. How does this really tie into that and bring value to that type of initiative, Robert?
Well, one is, I think you have to, from my perspective, there's two things that you have to say. One is, we have a great country with the great system. The free enterprise system works,
Yep.
but not everybody believes in the free enterprise system.
Correct.
So if we don't protect it, you can lose it. So I don't care whether you care about black people or not. You better focus on worrying about yourself. Because nobody cares about other people. They care about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you create a partnership that's a win-win? And if we prove that the free enterprise system works for everybody, it'll protect the country.
Right.
That's what I believe. So why else would you want to do business with somebody black? And it's not because it's the right thing to do or any of that nonsense. It is because when blacks are capable, you've got one chance to screw up. So you have what I call this can't afford to fail attitude.
Sure.
So a lot of times, smaller companies, they're more flexible, they're more nimble. That relationship matters a lot to them. And when it comes to the modern parts of the economy, like professional services, tech, and legal and finance, big companies have no advantage when it comes to human delivery.
Sure.
They have to charge for their buildings and their stock and all kinds of other stuff, where the small entrepreneur is going to be more nimble, more fast, and they have an economic incentive to make you happy because they're not as big as you. That's the way to think about black entrepreneurs. Not that you need to help them, which is the job of a company is not to help their vendors. It's to select a vendor that can deliver value. So we're saying there are a whole bunch of people there that you have this perception that you need to help them. Therefore, you're not really giving them an opportunity to help solve your problem. You need to think about this differently.
So just as we sort of drive forward, I like to use real life examples and real life scale. So Robert, you live in the state of Illinois now. Eddie, you live in the state of Illinois. I live in the state of Illinois. Robert, just for kicks, how much will Illinois spend on, let's call it, IT services, the state, over the next year or so?
Well, if you look at technology in general, technology is going to go from 5 to 10% of GDP really quickly.
Sure.
And with the acceleration of inflation, that's going to happen even faster.
Okay.
Because people are going to be forced to look for efficiencies.
Yep.
And trade technology for labor. We have a big issue around the availability of labor. So technology is going to be the primary, and it has been the primary creator of wealth. 9 out of the 10 most valuable companies in the country are tech companies.
So I don't want to interrupt you. I want to get to a number. How big is that number in the state of Illinois about?
Well, if you take Illinois is about a $900 billion economy.
Okay.
So let's see if you just round it off to $1 trillion.
Okay.
And you take 5% of that, right? That's $500 billion.
So
It's 500 million. It's a big market.
So I want to pause there for a second. So Eddie, I would call it
Sorry, it's billions, not millions.
billion.
Sorry.
Yeah. I would say a sliver of that probably go to, let's call it, minority companies or black companies. Would you say?
Yeah, a very small sliver. And back to what Robert talked about with the subcontracting role. That's critically important because most of the government supplier diversity programs are really subcontracting programs, right? When you apply a percentage goal, that means that whoever's the prime is going to have to give a percentage to a sub, which provides a barrier between that diverse company and the principal, right? So in this
Separates
case,
the money, the margin.
absolutely, and also the opportunity for them to innovate, right? They're taking direction.
Sure.
And that's not a way to grow a company. To grow a company, they have to be delivering immediate value. And so that's why those percentages, those goals are ineffective at really raising up and creating a larger black business ecosystem.
And I want to be clear about a couple of things. And I believe there is no other country in the world that I would rather live in. Like, the United States is the best country on the planet to me. Now, what we're talking about is not sort of anti-system. What we're talking about is really improvement of the process. So Quant 16, just dialing back, gives an opportunity to basically create primes. And then those primes have an opportunity to reinvest in their communities and create more primes, if you will. Is that sort of the game?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the free market allows us to do that, right? Government is always going to be restricted because there's rules and regulations in terms of how they can direct their funds. And so what we do is we provide the connection, right? That nexus between our customer and those businesses so that those businesses are going to be primes for the customer.
Okay. So to you both gentlemen, for companies that are listening right now, what's the call to action? If I'm a large company that has tremendous opportunity for spend and for diversification of my vendor portfolio, I want to do the right thing, but I may necessarily not have the leadership internally. I may not have the procurement plan, the bodies, the departments. What's the call to action? First, for Quant 16. Second, of course, for Alpha Mission, because it takes Quant 16, it takes profitable business to drive Alpha Mission. So what's the call to action?
So I'd say initially the call to action, we'd love to have a conversation with you, right? If you own a company and you're interested, we'd love to have a conversation with you to see where Quant 16 can add value. We know we can add value. We know we can save a lot of money for you and do the right thing. So I'd say that's the initial call to action. And the separate one is it's on the back of my shirt, right? Is just do business,
Love
right?
it.
Take advantage of that lead partner model that Robert explained before, is just do business with companies.
We're going to do something that we didn't get a chance to do in the first segment. For those who are here who may have a question or a statement or point of clarification for anything that you've heard, we're going to open an opportunity for you to sort of speak up and ask a question. I'll repeat the question back and have our friends Robert and Eddie here field them. So are there any questions or comments from the crowd at all that you may want to convey to this group up here? Come on. Oh, somebody's being called out. Okay, so those who are listening, he didn't have a question. He was just been put on the spot.
Oh, here we go.
He got a cool shirt, though. All right. Yes, ma'am.
So let's say somebody wants to get in touch with you guys. Like, is there, like, what's your social media or how would we get in touch with you and set up a meeting?
All right, so the question was, if you're listening and you want to learn more and get in contact with the team here, what's the social media handle? What's the website? How do we get in contact? I'll go to Eddie first, and then I'll go to Robert second.
Sure. I would say alphamission.com. Check out alphamission.com. There's a way to feed information in there, and we'd love to have a conversation with you.
Ditto.
He said ditto. So, sure.
I'm a part of the team in full disclosure, but I think that so many organizations and different businesses have popped up after the George Floyd murder. And as a journalist in Minneapolis, I've done many stories on that. And so I think it's great, obviously, that you guys have this organization that's really trying to change the way that Black people are seen and give Black people economic empowerment. I will ask, I've noticed since it's been a couple of years since the George Floyd incident, it seems like the initiative and the want and desire to make a positive change has started to wane. What do you do when you have this type of business that needs people to understand and support what you're doing and recognize that it is needed? How do you make sure, and what's your idea and thought about making sure that people realize that this company has to be sustainable and has to live forever, and that means that it needs support from Americans in general? Is that something that you
Yeah. So the question and statement, sort of wrap it up, was in light of all of the sort of social injustice that has happened over the last couple of years, there has been an emergence of support for underserved communities and specifically black businesses. And it started at a very high point. It was a hot button, a discussion, a global discussion, quite frankly. And the statement was made that it may be waning a bit. So how do we keep the emphasis on the importance of cultivating those businesses, supporting those businesses, and making sure that we create sustainable businesses that stand the test of time? I believe that Alpha Mission and Quant 16 was distinctly designed to do that. I'll allow Robert to just sort of put a cap on, because he's the founder of all of these companies, put a cap on one, for those who didn't get the first segment, why Quant 16 was developed. Two, how does the development of that company fuel and create a working economy that creates wealth for minority companies, specifically black companies, and then how those companies and revenue from his companies support the nonprofit arm, which is Alpha Mission, designed to keep the working engine sustainable and going forever. We want to make this thing contagious. We want to spread the message. And this is a working model, meaning this is just not exclusive to Robert's companies. This is a call of action, an opportunity for clear business model that can be adapted and participate anywhere. So Robert, just to kind of put a little cherry on the top, just take us through, because this is your baby. You thought of it. You're creating the next generation of leaders, thought leaders, creating wealth transfer for minority companies. Go for it.
Okay, well, I'm not doing that much, so it's not really about me. I just believe we live in a great country, and the country will be better when people participate in proportion to our talent. So when the black community participates in the economy in proportion to our talent, the country will do better. If not, we're going to have all kinds of drama. We have an unsustainable economic situation in this country. We've got $30 trillion worth of debt. That's going to have to get paid off one way or another. So one or two things is going to happen. We're either going to inflate our way out of it, or we're going to innovate our way out of it. I think we need to work together to innovate our way out of the challenges that we face as a country. So my own view is that we owe it to those people that came before us to do something for the people that are going to come after us. So just kind of a little nerdy guy that studies economics and history and math, and I think there's an economic solution to the challenge that we have. And I don't personally believe in corporate responsibility. I think it's just a lot of fluff. So that's out of the George Floyd thing. You had all these statements. We're going to give $100 billion, and we're going to create $50 billion, and we're going to do all this stuff. Well, what did they do? They spent a couple $1 million on fluffy stuff, on telling the world what they were going to do and how, through charity, they were going to change the world, and telling people things that are not true, like a home creates wealth. A home that is a consumer of wealth. It's not a producer of wealth unless you happen to live in a neighborhood where the homes are appraising at greater than the rate of inflation. So there's all these wonderful statements, and nobody's benefiting, and we're going backwards. So now, not only are we going to lose all this fluffiness, we're about at the end of this. And I think this 2 years, nobody cares anymore. I don't think they really cared that much. I think some people cared, but not enough to do something that was sustainable. In my view, it is the black community's responsibility to solve the problem of the black community. It's not the white community's responsibility. What we have to do is to say, working on this, we can create a better country for everybody. In fact, if you look at Atlanta in 1973, the black business community and the white business community got together. They said, blacks are going to have political power, whites have economic power. Let's create an Atlanta that works for everybody. And now 20% of blacks in Atlanta are self-employed. It is a very different city than it was in 1973. That's because people were working together. It wasn't the white community saying, oh, we feel sorry for you, we want to help you people, and none of that nonsense. It's, we got a city that we have to grow and we protect, let's work together. We need to have the same type of attitude when it comes to this country. So by just doing business with people that are ready to do business, the same principle of social capital that has pulled 1 billion people out of poverty across the world works. I think economics, just like gravity, works the same way for everybody.
Well, that's the last word. I want to thank both you, Robert, and Eddie. Again, for more information on the companies, you can go to alphamission.com, Just Do Business, and quant16.com. Thank you both, man. Thank you for your time.
Good job, Charles.
All right.
Excellent. Thank you.